Now, Mr. Fantastic joined the Marvel Rivals roster alongside the Invisible Woman during the first half of Season 1. Now, while this long-limbed duelist and sneaky strategist offers a ton of fun for those playing as them, however, facing against these two powerful heroes are far less pleasant than you might actually think. And today I'm going to be giving you the best way to counter these two heroes, both with strategy and different heroes as well. And literally only 1% of you that watch my videos are actually subscribed, so you better subscribe or else. But without further ado, let's dive straight in. Now, getting started with some simple logic against Mr. Fantastic. First and foremost, if a team doesn't actively work to counter Mr. Fantastic's stretchy abilities, he can easily exploit that opening to eliminate opponents one by one, especially with certain strategists supporting him with health and damage boosts. Fortunately, with the vast roster of heroes and villains in Marvel Rivals, there are plenty of characters capable of outmaneuvering the dangerous duelist, making them valuable picks when he becomes too difficult to manage. Now, as we know, Mr. Fantastic possesses an incredible attack range, but thankfully he doesn't have any reliable projectiles to throw out in case anyone tries to stay far away from him. Due to this, Iron Man can prove to be a real thorn in Fantastic's side since he can remain airborne indefinitely without sacrificing any of his own damage range in the process. Now, not only can Iron Man avoid Mr. Fantastic's basic attacks, but he can also remain safe from Fantastic's ultimate attack since it will only affect ground enemies. Now, you might be wondering about his bulk up ability that will reflect attack. Now, while that is the case that he can reflect attacks, it does however slow down his movement, meaning it also gives Iron Man the perfect chance to fly around the back to pummel him with missiles from behind, or use any other abilities. Now, Mr. Fantastic isn't the only character who can drag enemies into the fight. Winter Soldier can do the same exact thing with his bionic hook. Instead of allowing Mr. Fantastic to harass from mid-range, Bucky can pull him into close combat, leaving him with two different options. Either activate his reflective barrier in a desperate attempt to survive, or face being completely obliterated by the rest of the team. Now, if Winter Soldier hits Mr. Fantastic with his 3-hit combo, he can also completely destroy his health bar in a matter of seconds, while also leaving him vulnerable for the other players on your team to finish him off. The most important part is keeping an eye on Winter Soldier's abilities though, since each of them take a while to cool down, so I recommend you to only try to, confront or go against Mr. Fantastic when at least two of them are ready to go. Now, Wolverine is a duelist designed for taking on tanks, but considering how durable Mr. Fantastic can be, of course thanks to his shield, he also works wonders in taking down the leading member of Fantastic Four with his attacks and ferocious abilities. Now, if you didn't already know, Mr. Fantastic's flexible elongation ability will grant him shield hit points after launching himself toward an enemy or an ally. But Wolverine's vicious rampage and undying animal abilities can make quick work of this problem by shredding his shield in no more than a few seconds. Find out, to deal the maximum amount of damage with Wolverine should build up as much rage as possible since this will boost the effectiveness of his claws considerably, making him a real force to be reckoned with and a devastating counter to Mr. Fantastic. And if you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to like and subscribe. Now, believe it or not, a really solid counter to Mr. Fantastic is actually Loki. When Loki activates his regenerative domain ability, he will drop a small AoE device which provides a ton of healing for anyone who remains inside its range. However, if Loki sends out a few doppelgangers, then he can drop down 3 of these devices which can easily save the team from Mr. Fantastic's ultimate ability. Now, another counter to Mr. Fantastic with Loki, again, I don't know how practical this actually is, but Loki possesses the backstep ability which allows his melee attack to deal far more damage when attacking an enemy from behind than in front. This means that whenever Mr. Fantastic activates his reflective rubber ability, Loki can turn invisible and sneak behind to obliterate his health bar. But again, I'm not really sure how practical this actually is because you are a strategist and it's kind of a rather risky play, so use this knowledge as you would. Now, following out, another really solid counter to Mr. Fantastic is actually Iron Fist. Now, while Mr. Fantastic usually performs well in one-on-one encounters, Iron Fist's speed can make him a little too much for Fantastic to handle. Since Mr. Fantastic possesses a fairly sluggish basic attack speed and often prefers to keep his foes at medium to long range to dish out the most amount of damage possible, both Iron Fist's kick and leap allow him to close the gap in a blink of an eye so that he can melt Fantastic's health bar with a barrage of ferocious attacks. Now, considering that Iron Fist's abilities have a pretty lengthy cooldown outside of his triple jump, it's important to ensure that they're all ready to go when approaching Mr. Fantastic. Otherwise, you're kind of just going to be a sitting duck when you don't have any abilities ready to go and you end up getting caught out. Now, another super solid counter to Mr. Fantastic is the lovable tree ant, Mr. Groot himself. Now, Mr. Fantastic's basic attack already gives him a lot of attack range, or, moderate range, but he can also get his hands on the enemy from a distance with his flexible elongation and disdained grip abilities, both which can do, really good damage. Of course, if they manage to land. Now, Groot possesses 2 different types of walls that can prevent Mr. Fantastic from pulling these moves off. So it's like when Mr. Fantastic is going for an ability to use, you kind of just wall it off. Now, Groot's walls come with a generous cooldown, especially his smaller Ironwood walls, meaning he can continue blocking Mr. Fantastic's abilities or, damage off from the team through an entire match. Also, at the same time, Groot can use these walls to cut off Fantastic from his own team, ensuring he doesn't receive any extra healing. So it's kind of like full boxing someone from Fortnite. I've actually never played Fortnite, but I guess that's a relation, I don't know. Now, there's arguably no hero in the entire game who can deal with enemy AoE attacks better than Luna Snow, and that definitely comes in handy when you're trying to deal with Mr. Fantastic, and more specifically, his ultimate attack. When Mr. Fantastic uses his ultimate ability, Mr. Fantastic will bounce around multiple times, dealing splash damage to anyone who gets caught in the attack. Now, if used correctly, his ultimate could wipe out the entire team, but Luna Snow can prevent this from happening by using her own ultimate to completely negate all of the damage that Mr. Fantastic can possibly do, as they roughly have about the same time limit. So if you are using Mr. Fantastic's ultimate, it's pretty good to be aware of, the ultimates that the enemy team has. Now, last but certainly not least, we come to Hawkeye. Now, Hawkeye already does an insane amount of damage, especially from, medium to long range with his full charge shots, but he can easily counter Mr. Fantastic. By continuously landing headshots, you can quickly eliminate Mr. Fantastic, and that can also be said with any character in the game. But the only thing you really have to look out for when you're going against Mr. Fantastic as Hawkeye is for his reflective rubber, which allows him to absorb damage, which he can then, fire back at the enemy. All you have to do is either wait for him to use the ability or try to quickly eliminate before he even realizes you're dealing damage to him. And that's practically how you can counter Mr. Fantastic and Marvel Rivals. If you're sticking with me still, make sure to hit that like button. Now on to Invisible Woman. Now, Invisible Woman from the Fantastic Four, also known as Susan Storm, is one of the strategists who was added to Marvel Rivals' massive roster alongside the launch of Season 1. Now, she's definitely a very fun and strong strategist that has come to this game, but as such, every strategist has to have some type of counter. So here's how we can deal with our thick mommy. Now, as Invisible Woman is a healer or a strategist, flyers and flankers are definitely a major counter to her. All of Invisible Woman's tools are AoE, and as such, if she's looking up to deal with a flyer like Iron Man or Storm, those tools have minimal impact on the rest of the enemy team. Now, of course, those tools can knock down a flying target, but I'm talking mainly if she is distracted with an enemy flyer, then she's not healing her team. Furthermore, if she's fending off a flyer, her piercing projectiles aren't healing, her team like I said. Now, just like other strategists, flankers, namely like Psylocke, Star-Lord, Black Panther, or any similar, character with rapid weapons can also pressure her without going in. Her only major self-heal ability tool is her invisibility, which is her passive, or her double jump. And when she uses those abilities, she can't heal her team. Now, one way to really counter her is to constantly poke at them. Even though it doesn't seem like it's the best way to counter her, it actually rather is. But I just want to quickly further explore what I meant by she can't really self-heal. Now, it's true that Invisible Woman can self-heal from her passive, which you have to be out of combat for 5 seconds, or if she uses her double jump ability, which immediately puts her into that passive state healing form. But that's mainly it. When she's in this invisible form, she can't provide healing to her team, she can't use any of her utility to deal damage to the enemy team, and rather, it's kind of like she's gambling. She either heals herself or she tries to heal her team. There's really no in between. Now, you could say her alternative attack, which grants the shield and the passive healing in an area, is a self-healing tool, which I say it kind of is. You can only shield your teammates, and to receive that, AoE healing, you do have to be next to that shield. So you could say it is a form of self-healing, but the thing is you can't place that shield on yourself. So to sum it up, the best ways to deal with Invisible Woman is to get some, flankers and flyers. Use the flyers, to either distract her. From there, use the flankers to jump on her. Now, another really good tip is isolation. If you can get her isolated and constantly getting damage done to her, she can't enter her passive form, of course, unless she uses her jump. Now, even though she is invisible, just like Psylocke when she's invisible, you can still hear the footsteps, so it's pretty easy to determine where she is. That, of course, if you're playing with sound in the game. Now, when it comes to her ultimate ability, there isn't really that many hard counters, because inside of that ultimate, there's an insane amount of healing that is given to her teammates. I guess you could say Iron Man's ultimate is kind of a counter, but it's literally a shot in the dark trying to find the enemies in that thing with it. But you could also say it's trying to get like a needle off a haystack when you use Iron Man's ult to try to hit anyone in Invisible Woman's ult, because it's quite literally the most random thing to ever do, And also, at the end of the day, you're kind of wasting Iron Man's ult. But still, at the end of the day, Iron Man's ultimate still does enough damage to one-shot anyone inside of her ult. But again, it's just completely random. But anyways, that's essentially how you can counter the two new heroes in Marvel Rivals, both for Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman. Now, if you hate me because I made this video, look, I'm sorry. How I see it, if I don't make it, someone else will, so I might as well just do it. I know how to counter them, and I'd rather share the information. So if you found this video useful in any way, shape, or form, or maybe you just found it entertaining, do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. We're almost to 10,000 subscribers. And if you have your own ways to counter these two new heroes, let me know in the comments down below. But anyways, I hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next one.